The other day, I was watching a documentary on YouTube about the late great comedian Jerry Lewis, and he was producing this movie. I can't remember what the movie was, but they were introducing some of the starlets, the women who were in his movies. And this one woman in particular, can't remember her name, I'll think of it in a moment, but she was saying that Jerry Lewis called her to his dressing room. Now that to me sends a negative signal immediately. Why would you want to talk to a woman alone in your dressing room and whatever you're thinking? Yeah, you're probably right. So she went to his dressing room to talk about the movie ostensibly, and apparently he had something else on his mind, and which was, well, let's just say that it was what we would consider immoral activity. And she just turned him down, just flat turned him down. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Jerry Lewis, funny guy on screen and on stage, but in real life, he was kind of a dominant, controlling figure. I would say he may have been a psychopath, I don't know. Certainly seemed to me to be in-your-face narcissist, definitely a controller. And you just don't say no to this guy, it doesn't matter what it is. So the way that he paid this woman back, according to her, is he instructed everybody on the set, I mean everybody in the production company, not just the actors and actresses, but everyone on the production crew, to not talk to her, to just, well, in religious terms, I guess you would call it shunning, just to have nothing to do with her whatsoever. That was his way of paying her back.
I said, maybe I should resign right now because this is going to be awkward to work with you with this situation. He said, it's too late. You already signed the contract and we're going to go ahead with this. That's my punishment. No one was allowed to speak to me on that set.
So what we see is this. We're talking about some of the games that narcissists play that make us wonder, should we leave these people? Should we stay with them? And let's take a look at what I would call the 8 reasons to leave somebody. And I know sometimes you can't leave them because you're married to them or you're working with them. I get that. But when you can leave someone, these are 8 indicators that you should leave. My personal opinion, once you understand this is a controlling person, that chances are this is somebody that if you're not tied to them, if you're not married to them, it's time to walk away, you know, with very, very few exceptions. Could be a neighbor, you know, you can't just get up and move every time you have a neighbor who is a problem because, well, you're always going to have that unless you live out in the desert somewhere, and then you're going to have to deal with little critters, you know, that run around in the desert and bite people. Number 1 is this. If they toxify you, that is an indicator that, okay, it's time to pick up and go, which I think is what happened to this actress. Well, I think it's clearly what happened to this actress who was working with Jerry Lewis. You know, his way of punishing her was to basically make her toxic in the eyes of everyone else. And narcissists are infamous for doing that because, well, once word gets out that they are what they are, they become toxic. They want that to happen. So they will make you toxic so no one will talk to you, and then you can't tell them that they are toxic. Now, I'm thinking one of the reasons he may have done this, and I'm not a mind reader, and I certainly can't go back in time, but I'm thinking one of the reasons he wanted no one to talk to her is because he didn't want her telling everyone what he did. What's more, he didn't want everyone telling her what he has done. He didn't want this gossip thing flowing back and forth about him. Possibly, I don't know, but I've seen that in other narcissists, and I think that's covert narcissist, and I think that is normal. Narcissism is all about control. I think you probably already know that, but they want to dominate. They want to dominate or destroy. And if they can't dominate you, then they will destroy you or destroy you. So the point is, once you get in contact with a narcissist, it's all about destruction. So if they dominate you, that destroys you. So if you say, I'm not going to be dominated, well, then they're going to destroy you some other way. It's all about destruction. That is the essence of narcissism. It's all about control, and that means they will control you, and to control you, they effectively have to destroy you as a person. and you become kind of like a zombie. You're no longer you. You're like a puppet. You're just made out of wood. We've talked about this before, like a little dummy. You know, you sit on your lap and they pull your controls, so they destroy you. Number 2 is this: if they make you feel isolated from others. This is kind of the same thing we just talked about, but it's a little bit different in that if you notice that the narcissist, maybe he's not this aggressive or that assertive, but he just is, or she is just so controlling that they're the only person in your life by design, by his design or her design, by the design of the narcissist. Now, some people, they're just loners, you know. People, you know, I've got Asperger's syndrome, and I tend to be alone. I'm not controlled by anybody, but that's just the way that I am, kind of the way that I like it. I like being by myself. A lot of people are like that. So being a loner, I'm saying, is not necessarily the problem, but when you feel insulated from others, there's this barrier between other people because the narcissist in your life is so controlling. And I have heard stories of particularly young women where their boyfriend is so controlling, so jealous, so envious, that if she talks to anyone else, not just other guys, but I mean anybody, family members, other, you know, doesn't want her to have any friends, doesn't want her to have any self-time, it's all about him, even when he's not around her, she has to be insulated from everyone else because, well, narcissists sometimes are just that controlling. And if you've ever been a victim, been abused by a covert narcissist, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And that makes for a very miserable life. Now, they're not that way at the beginning because they want to fool you, you know, the love bombing thing. So if you feel like you are insulated, like there is this barrier between you and everyone else, and that's by design, not your design, but by the design of the narcissist, that he is maybe even going to the extent of, you know, kind of stalking you, you know, reading your emails when you're not on the computer, if they get access to your account, or maybe checking your phone. If you're not, if it's there alone, they'll pick it up, check with it. They're snooping to see who you're hanging out with because they are the dominant one in your life exclusively. At least that's the way they want it. Number 3, it may be time to go if you notice that what I call micro-controlling is a part of your relationship with a narcissist, something that is very similar to being insulated, only now you are feeling like you are out of control. Remember the analogies we've been using about the puppet, they pull your string, or the dummy that sits on your lap and they pull the levers. It's no longer you controlling your life. It is the narcissist, this other person, who is controlling everything about you. Now, the narcissist that I have known in the past, one in particular, well, several in particular, I should say, is they want you to feel like you rely on them for virtually everything. If they are not your source for just about everything that they could possibly make you dependent on, they're not happy. So the more dependent you become on the narcissist, the more the narcissist likes it. That feeds his supply. And supply, as we always like to define, is anything that boosts the ego of a narcissist. So they want to micro-control you, you know, pulling those levers constantly. And so you feel, you have that sense that this person is over-controlling me. I had a narcissist in my life, just a friend. And sometimes he would tell me where I could and could not go. Well, I go where I want to go, sorry, but, and he wasn't real happy about that. But, I mean, these people they're so audacious. I mean, it's so weird. You sometimes have to wonder, how can you not see this is abhorrent behavior? It's just horrific. Number 4 is what we would call humiliation, which becomes the norm. Let's talk about this for just a second because I've talked about it in other videos. But, you know, the word humiliation comes from the same Latin word as we get the word humus, which means dirt. So when you humiliate somebody, it means you're treating them like dirt. But what we're talking about here is when they use sarcasm or ridicule and try to put you down to make you the brunt of the joke. If you're around a person who is doing that to you all the time, I'm not talking about teasing, playful teasing. I think most of us do that. That's not narcissism. That's not humiliation. Sometimes we go overboard, right? But this is someone who it's mean-spirited, and you know it. And the purpose of the humiliation of the teasing is not to be lighthearted, but it's to put you down and to relatively elevate the narcissist. It really doesn't build them up any, but the perception is you're lower than them. That means in their mind, that's the only way they can elevate themselves, is to push everybody down. They can't actually elevate themselves. It's all perception. Number 5 is they are angry, therefore toxic. That is a sign that this is a person you probably need to get away from. Now, the steps of narcissistic abuse, or the cycle, I should call it. It always begins with love bombing. I mean, they just seem like the perfect person. Nice, friendly, lovable, caring, considerate, good buddy, love interest, whatever, very romantic at the start, but then that fades. And then the real person begins to show up, and that real person often has a problem with anger. They have a temper problem. Well, that puts stress on you. I mean, this is not healthy, physically, mentally. So the person then is what I would call toxic. So think of the most toxic thing you could possibly drink. You don't want to drink laundry detergent, do you? I don't think that'd kill you, but it'd make you sick. You may wish you were dead. I don't know. I mean, toxic, there's all kinds of things around your household you could drink that would, really make you sick. You're not going to drink that stuff, right? I mean, you know better. You don't need the little, crossbones and skull on it to tell you, this is bleach, you don't drink it. I think you know that, right? But for some reason, we still hang out with toxic people. Now, in my life, I know 1 or 2 people who are so toxic that I won't be around them. If I know they're going to be someplace, I intentionally will not be there. Won't be in the same room with them, if at all possible. And usually it is possible not to be around them because they're just that toxic. Why would you subject yourself to that kind of stress and anxiety, which hurts you physically and hurts you mentally, can cause depression or trigger depression, I should say? I can't think of a good reason to be around people like that. Now, maybe you have to be. I mean, if it's a boss where you work, some of those people are toxic by design. They do it on purpose, but could be a coworker, could be a family member. Sometimes you can't get away from them. But whenever possible, should you stay? Should you go? Should you leave? Should you get away from them? Yeah, if it's a rattlesnake, I kind of suggest you get away from them. If it's a snarling pit bull, my recommendation is, don't go up and pet that thing. If it's a toxic person, it's time to go. Say goodbye. No thanks. I don't need this. Now some people think, well, that's a sign of weakness. I don't think so. Running from a rattlesnake, that's just intelligence. It's not weakness. If you want to think it's weakness, well, okay, get bit by a rattlesnake and then we'll see how weak you are. No, I don't think anybody thinks that way, including you. I don't think that way. So why don't we approach toxic people the same way? So if someone who is just constantly angry, they're always in a bad mood, and they're always, their anger particularly is with you. They're targeting you with their anger. This is someone, just stay away from them. Get away from them. Rattlesnake, think pit bull, It's not weakness, it's just common sense. It's for your good health. Number 6 is they play the victim. I think I talked about this maybe twice already in the last week or so, and that is that narcissists like to flip the story. They're the ones who are angry, they're the ones who are abusive, they're the ones who are toxic, and they will portray you as toxic. I had a narcissist friend in my life, quote, friend, unquote, very toxic, and when he went engaged in his smear campaign, he tried to make me appear that I was the one who was toxic, that he was just miserable around me. Well, what had happened is I found out he was scamming me, he was taking advantage of me, and yeah, he felt a little uncomfortable about that, and I can understand. But he's the one who was toxic, right? So they will do that. They will flip the story. They will play the victim. They're the victim of your toxicity, not the other way around. Well, okay, they're just lying. But people believe them. You know, surprisingly, I've mentioned this before, but it seems to be that about 80% of the people that are approached in the narcissist smear campaign, this is based on my experience. You know, I'm about 70 years old, and I've got decades of experience, particularly with narcissism, because, well, that sticks with you for a very long time. I mean, it embeds itself very deeply in your psyche. So anyhow, you know, he was just toxic, but he made me out to be the one who was toxic. And so I'm very sensitive to this particular problem with narcissists. Got to be aware of that. And you don't know it. You don't see it coming. But anyhow, about 80% of the people that he talked to were convinced that I was the one who was toxic initially. Now, a lot of those people came around. I mean, what about the 20%? Well, they tended to be people who knew both me and the narcissist. The other people didn't know me well, or they didn't know the narcissist well. So they just kind of believed his story. You know, like we talked about yesterday, faith comes by hearing, and we walk by faith, not by sight. So they believed him, but a lot of those 80% came to their senses when the truth came to light, and they discovered, this guy has a criminal history. And the narcissist in your life may not have a criminal history, but they may very well. But if they're narcissists, you know, they're born that way, so they definitely have a history of being narcissist. That can come to light, particularly when they begin to target the people that they convince that you were toxic. Number 7 is, well, they do just the opposite of playing the victim, and that is they portray you as the problem. So basically, we're saying the same thing that we just said. The narcissist on one side plays the victim, and you, on the other hand, are the problem. You're the bad guy. You're the one in the black hat, and they're the one in the white hat. You're the bad guy. They're the good guy. And again, people believe this. Number 8. When do you know it's time to leave a narcissist? Well, when they are possessive to a fault. Now, we talked about MicroControl number 3. But this comes to a point where it's as if they're not just controlling you, but they own you. You are their possession. I can assure you that nobody owns you. It's illegal. Besides unethical to own people. You just don't. But the narcissist, in his way of thinking, he is so possessive that he perceives you as, well, like a slave. You do what he wants you to do or she wants you to do. They order you about, tell you when to get up, when to go to bed, which direction to go, how to do it, how fast to drive, where you can and cannot work, or if you can and cannot work, or where you can have dinner, or what you should have for dinner. Because they own you, and they love to own people. They love that extreme, well, let's call possessiveness extreme control. Because you, in their thinking, literally belong to them. And if you ask them, they would probably say, no, I don't own this person. But maybe not. Maybe they say, yeah. Maybe they brag about it. I don't know. See those 2 rectangles on the screen? Let's keep talking if you want. Just click one of those 2 rectangles. We'll keep on with our conversation. But if not, thank you for stopping by, and see y'all next time.